How do you define a home? Is it a high-rise apartment in the heart of the city? A quiet roof over a flat piece of land? Or simply a peaceful place where people can take shelter? If that is your definition, then the places in this video will make you think again. Because in this world, there are houses clinging to sheer cliffs, villages suspended on mountain slopes, and settlements located right next to hazards that could swallow everything overnight. And yet, amidst all that absurdity, people still live there, and they call it home. Stay with us until the end of the video, because the final location might just make you ask yourself, ultimately, what truly turns a dangerous place into a home? If you enjoy bizarre journeys of discovery like this, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and join us on our next adventures. Not every temple stands on the ground. There are places where humans build their faith in the middle of the sky. The Hanging Temple. Nestled on a vertical cliff of Mount Heng, Shaanxi, about 56 kilometers from Datong, the structure appears to be suspended in mid-air. Grottos and shrines are connected by winding wooden corridors clinging to the rock face, so fragile it makes you wonder who dared to take the first steps. Originally named Xuankong Temple, Hanging Pavilion, it combines Taoism and Buddhism, a rare blend. Later, the name Hanging Temple was born, as there was no more accurate way to describe it. Built over 1,500 years ago, the structure relies on wooden beams inserted deep into the cliff, utilizing the natural structure to resist wind, rain, and earthquakes. But despite the solid engineering, the feeling of walking on those suspended corridors is like walking the line between faith and fear, where people still pray as if the closer they are to heaven, the more easily their prayers are heard. Amid the windswept hills of northern Portugal, there is a house that looks like it wandered straight out of prehistoric times. Casa do Penedo. It wasn't built on flat ground, nor does it follow any kind of blueprint. Instead, it is wedged tightly between four massive boulders. It's as if nature accidentally stacked the rocks into a cave, and humans simply moved in. Hidden in a quiet, remote hillside, this tiny two-story house was originally just a weekend retreat for a family. Inside, everything is rustic and simple. A small kitchen, a cozy living room, and a concrete sofa weighing up to 360 kilograms. Heavy enough to feel like the homeowner was saying, "Once you sit down, you might as well stay there. Why bother getting up?" But trouble arrived when the house unexpectedly appeared in films. Its newfound fame turned this peaceful hideaway into a magnet for curious crowds, and unfortunately, vandals as well. After dozens of times cleaning up shattered glass from repeated break-ins, the owners reluctantly moved away, and the house, it had no choice but to upgrade itself for protection. Bulletproof windows, reinforced steel bars, and heavy metal doors. A bitter irony, this house, with the appearance of something from the Stone Age, now has to rely on modern security systems to defend itself against modern humans. Leaving behind this peculiar stone house, our journey continues. Get ready, because in the destinations ahead, the very definition of a home will stretch far beyond your imagination. People often say living under a rock to imply being out of touch. But in Spain, there is a place where that saying is completely true. Setenil de las Bodegas, located in the Andalusia region, about 30 minutes from Ronda, this village doesn't sit on top of the ground. Instead, it looks as though it's being swallowed by a giant canyon. The winding streets snake beneath massive rock overhangs that act as natural ceilings, from houses and bars to shops. Everything is tucked into the cliffs, known as abrigos bajo las rocas. At first glance, it looks terrifying. But those very rock masses are the perfect air conditioner, cool in the summer and warm in the winter. The ancients only needed to build a front wall. Nature took care of the rest. Still, the feeling of sitting under millions of tons of rock can send a chill down your spine. Nevertheless, for centuries, the people here have lived peacefully alongside it. In southern Italy, there exists a city where homes were not built up, but carved deep into the rock, Sassi di Matera. Located in the Basilicata region, these limestone caves, eroded over time, have been inhabited for over 9,000 years, making this one of the oldest continuously inhabited settlements in the world. It was once a labyrinth of thousands of overlapping caves, but behind the ancient facade was a harsh reality. People lived crowded together with livestock, lacking electricity, clean water, and sewage systems. Disease was rampant, and malaria once turned this place into a living hell in the mid-20th century, forcing the Italian government to relocate thousands of residents. Then a paradox occurred. From a national shame, Matera was reborn. The caves became hotels, cafes, and film sets. The harsh past has now transformed into a beauty that draws the world's curiosity. A place where people still live, serving as a reminder of the true meaning of home. At the southern tip of Corsica, where the deep blue Mediterranean beats against vertical white limestone cliffs, exists a paradox called the Bonifacio cliff houses. These tall buildings do not stand on soil, but cling to the edge of limestone cliffs nearly 70 meters high, perched so precariously it seems a strong gust of wind could slide them into the sea. From afar, Bonifacio appears like a surrealist painting. Pale yellow blocks of houses stacked on a white and cream striped rock base that has been eroded by waves for centuries. About 30 ancient structures sit right at the edge of the abyss, creating a skyline that is both magnificent and reckless. Here, when you open a window, you might need to check your courage first. Once a strategic fortress, the town possesses narrow stone streets, ancient churches, and medieval squares. But beneath that beauty, the rock foundation is still eroding every day. The waves aren't in a hurry, but they don't stop, and within that fragile boundary, people still live, still calling that precarious place home. Leaving the Bonifacio cliff houses, our journey takes us to another cliff. Not created by nature, but by humans. Rocinha. Located on the steep hillsides of Rio de Janeiro, this largest favela in Brazil is a labyrinth for over 150,000 people. Houses are not planned. They are stacked on top of each other like spontaneous Lego blocks. With power lines tangled like spider webs, a self-made city that utilizes every single centimeter. But behind the vibrancy is a tense history. Rocinha was once a hotspot for gunfights between drug gangs and police. In 2017, a tourist was killed after getting lost in a dangerous area. A cold reminder that this place isn't always friendly. Yet the paradox reappears. From a symbol of violence, Rocinha has become a famous check-in spot where people admire the panoramic view of Rio from the gateway to heaven. One side is vibrant beauty, the other is a cramped reality. Two worlds just a few steps apart. Not every place needs to be overwhelming to be memorable. Some places simply quietly exist, and that is enough to make people stop. Iruya. Located at an altitude of nearly 2,800 meters in the Andes, this small town nestles between mountain slopes that overlap like waves of stone. Steep cobblestone streets wind past colonial-style houses, all seeming to bow before nature, maintaining a slow and silent pace of life. To get here, you must traverse winding dirt roads where every turn is a test of courage. At times you'll wonder, am I a tourist or competing in an off-road driving challenge? It is this isolation that keeps Iruya almost outside the modern world. No noise, no rush, just a rich Andean culture. But behind the peace is a silent challenge: the altitude, the weather, and the isolation. And amidst those cold mountain layers, people remain, not to conquer, but to harmonize. There are places that don't welcome humans at all, yet humans still stay. Dankar village. Perched precariously on a cliff in the Spiti Valley, Dankar looks like a mud fortress hanging in the sky. The brown blocks of houses are stacked and cling tightly to the vertical mountainside, with a deep abyss yawning below. A scene that makes you reflexively hold your breath. The name Dankar means fortress on a cliff, and that is also its history. This place was the capital of the Spiti kingdom in the 17th century. A center of Buddhism and a checkpoint for trade routes, a position that was both sacred and strategic. But living here has never been easy. Landslides, thin air, and a harsh climate. Climbing just a few steps is enough to make you wonder, am I sightseeing or climbing a mini version of Everest? And amidst the cold wind and dry rock, people stay, not just to live, but to preserve a faith that has lasted for centuries. If someone told you this was the world's largest strawberry lake, you'd have to think for a few seconds to be sure they weren't joking. Located deep in the Himalayas, Spiti is a world that is arid, freezing, and almost entirely isolated. At altitudes of over 3,000 meters, villages like Tashigang or Kibba cling to vertical slopes with deep canyons below. On another peak, Dankar Monastery quietly guards the valley. But Spiti is not just the past. Amidst the rock and wind, solar-powered resorts have appeared, an intersection of the ancient and the future. You can disconnect from the net, but connect directly to the sun. Life here is slow, growing barley and peas, living according to nature and Buddhism. However, the thin air, freezing winters, and roads isolated for months remain a harsh challenge. A place where humans exist by adapting. Hidden amidst the mountains of Jiangxi, Wangxian Valley is where hanging houses cling to cliffs up to 110 meters high, as if defying gravity. Built in an ancient style, with curved roofs and red lanterns, they look down upon waterfalls, rivers, and green forests, creating a landscape that is both majestic and surreal. By day, the place is like a vivid ink wash painting. But when night falls, the entire valley glows like a city in the clouds. Visitors can walk on wooden paths clinging to the cliffs, explore three-tiered waterfalls, and walk through the mist. Every step makes the heart skip a beat. Not just for viewing, the Immortal Valley also allows you to stay in rooms suspended in mid-air. An experience that is both enchanting and unsettling, as if humans are quietly testing their own limits. A mountain peak where humans must use both hands and feet to reach. And once at the top, it feels like leaving the earth. Mount Fanjing. Located in Guizhou, this UNESCO World Heritage Mountain stands out with its strange, mushroom stone. Where two ancient temples sit separately on peaks over 2,500 meters high, connected by a stone bridge as thin as a thread in the sky. Hence its name, the City in the Clouds. This is a sacred Bodhi Manda of Maitreya Buddha. But to get there, you must climb thousands of vertical steps, with sections where you are forced to grip the rock. At times you'll wonder, am I on a pilgrimage or a dangerous unroped climb? The reward is a surreal landscape, clouds floating at eye level, light creating rainbow halos, and even the appearance of Buddha's light, shadows on the clouds. And then, standing between heaven and earth, you understand why humans always seek limits beyond themselves. The next location is not on a cliff, but on the very ground that is moving. Grindavik. Located on the Reykjanes Peninsula near Keflavik International Airport, this coastal town was once famous for the Blue Lagoon and its lava landscapes. But since late 2023, frequent earthquakes and rising magma have created cracks that can swallow roads and houses in an instant. To the north, the Svartsengi power station, a vital source of hot water and energy, became a fragile heart amidst the shaking land. When the risk of eruption increased, the entire town had to evacuate, leaving behind homes they didn't have time to say goodbye to. Everything started with light tremors, then became a non-stop series of earthquakes, broken glass, cracked earth, and sirens wailing. Roads were torn apart, and houses shifted by dozens of centimeters. But amidst the chaos, people still helped each other, lending homes, returning just to hold on to a bit of memory. Here, home can disappear in a night. Only the people remain together. If faith could be carved into form, then the Maijishan Grottoes are the clearest proof. Located in Tianshui, Gansu, this complex is carved into the side of Mount Maiji, a mountain shaped like a stack of wheat. On a cliff nearly 150 meters high, more than 200 caves open like windows into the past. Connected by precarious suspended wooden walkways. Formed over 1,600 years ago, this site contains thousands of terracotta statues and frescoes, earning it the title Oriental Sculpture Museum. Once a stop on the Silk Road, Maijishan is a crossroads of culture and belief. But what is special is not just the quantity or the age, but how it exists, clinging to rock and wind, where rain erodes it bit by bit. Just looking down is enough to understand why you must walk very slowly. Here, humans didn't just build, they carved their faith into nature itself. Instead of building houses to resist nature, there is a place where humans turned the mountain itself into a shelter. Vardzia Cave City. Located in the Samtskhe-Javakheti region of southern Georgia, near the borders of Turkey and Armenia, Vardzia stretches across the slopes of Mount Erusheti like a giant engraving. Built in the 12th century during the reign of Queen Tamar, it was a fortress hidden from war. Over 600 caves were dug deep into the rock, connected by corridors, stairs, and secret tunnels, creating a multi-story city that housed thousands of people. The ancients even channeled water through underground pipes, a perfect adaptation to the harsh terrain. The road there is challenging, winding mountains, paths along cliff edges, and steep stairs. At times you'll wonder, am I sightseeing or in an ancient survival challenge? And when standing in the heart of the mountain, looking out over the valley, you don't just see a view, you touch an era that survived by merging with the stone. A city with no brick walls, no tiled roofs, no proper streets. Yet it was once a center of power. Uplistsikhe Cave City. Located beside the Mtkwari River in Georgia, this place has existed for over 3,000 years. The entire city was carved directly into the arid, rocky mountainside. From tunnels and meeting rooms to temples, everything blends into the terrain as if humans didn't build, but liberated the space from the rock. The name Uplistsikhe means Lord's Fortress, reflecting its role as a religious and political center before Christianity became the state religion. Walking across the worn stone steps, you feel as if you are walking through a frozen memory. At times you'll wonder, am I in the present or lost in the past? But time does not stand still. Earthquakes and erosion have taken a portion of the city. And amidst the stone and silence, Uplistsikhe still exists, as a reminder of how humans once lived inside nature. And then, the next destination takes you to a place where the boundary between humans and nature almost disappears. Refuge des Cosmiques, located on the Mont Blanc Massif in France at an altitude of 3,613 meters on the Col du Midi Glacier. This hut serves as an anchor point in a world of ice and snow. From Aiguille du Midi, it takes less than an hour to reach, but every step requires caution against the cold wind and thin air. This is a vital stop for those conquering Mont Blanc via the Three Monts route. Inside, the warm space, crowded bunk beds, and hot meals become a luxury at such a harsh altitude. Here, you sleep well not because it's soft, but because you are exhausted. When night falls, the starry sky opens up, with a silent sea of clouds beneath your feet. Here, home is not for staying. It is a place that helps you continue your journey. There are places humanity doesn't just climb up to. They make a pilgrimage there with all their faith. Paro Taktsang. Perched precariously on a cliff over 9,800 feet, 3,000 meters high, looking down into the Paro Valley of Bhutan, this monastery was built in 1692. But its story begins long before that. According to legend, Guru Rinpoche Padmasambhava flew here on the back of a tigress and meditated in a cave, turning this site into one of the 13 most sacred tiger lairs in Vajrayana Buddhism. From afar, the monastery seems suspended in mid-air, connected to the world by precarious wooden stairs hugging the cliff face. The path up here is far from easy. Hours of steep climbing, thin air, and every footstep slows down. There are sections where you will ask yourself, am I walking up a mountain or stepping closer to something much greater? But that very journey is part of the experience. Along the way, vibrant prayer flags flutter, carrying the belief that every gust of wind transports a blessing. The sound of running streams, the mountain wind, and the absolute tranquility create a space where time seems to stop. And then standing before that suspended monastery, you realize this isn't just a structure, it is a place where humanity places its faith, as close to heaven as possible. Leaving Paro Taktsang, where home is a journey of faith, our journey will take us to places where people don't just hang on cliffs, but stand completely isolated in the sky. Leaving behind lands that seem forgotten by time, our journey takes us to a place where nature doesn't just challenge humanity, it constantly reminds them, I am still alive. On the slopes of Mount Merapi, near Yogyakarta, villages like Kaliadem, Kangkringan, Sengi, and Selo cling to elevations of up to 1,700 meters. It may sound peaceful until you realize that beneath your feet lies one of the most active volcanoes on Earth. The people here rely on farming the fertile volcanic soil, a chilling paradox. The very force that can destroy everything is also what sustains their lives. Less than 7 kilometers from the summit, areas devastated by the 2010 eruption still bear its scars. Charred homes, vehicles buried in ash, memories frozen beneath layers of grey. Yet today, those same places have become haunting attractions where visitors ride jeeps across cooled lava fields, venturing closer to the fragile boundary between life and destruction. To the south, forests like Tlogo Nirmolo and Tlogo Munkar appear almost impossibly serene, but that very calm is what makes it unsettling. Because here, beauty always comes with a warning. Everything is temporary before the mountain speaks again. The next destination on this journey has no path leading up to it, only a rope and sheer courage. Debre Damo Monastery. Isolated on a rocky plateau in the Tigray region of Ethiopia, the Debre Damo Monastery seems entirely cut off from the world below. No stairs, no trails, just a single leather rope dropped from above, forcing you to scale a sheer cliff face just to reach this sacred site. Built in the 6th century, this is one of the oldest religious centers, featuring unique Axiomite architecture, stone and wood, stacked with such precision that it defies time itself. Inside, ancient manuscripts are still preserved, like living fragments of memory from a civilization that has endured for millennia. But this place isn't just hard to reach, it also keeps its own strict rules. Women are not permitted to set foot on the summit, making Debre Damo even more enigmatic. And it is no coincidence that many ancient churches in Ethiopia, like Abuna Yamata Guh, were built in locations that are almost impossible to reach. Here, isolation is not an obstacle, it is a core part of the faith. And so, in that suspended void, people remain, keeping their faith from ever falling. The next destination on this journey is not for mere curiosity. It is for those who are ready to gamble with their own fears. Abuna Yamata Guh Church. Located at an altitude of over 8,200 feet, 2,500 meters, in the Tigray region of Ethiopia, this monolithic church was chiseled straight into the cliff face in the 5th century. But to reach this place, you must scale vertical rock walls, cross a natural stone bridge with hundreds of feet of sheer drop on either side, and then continue by gripping tiny footholds in the rock. No safety ropes, no handrails. Inside, ancient frescoes remain preserved almost perfectly after thousands of years, thanks to the dry air and absolute isolation. Images of the 9 saints and the apostles cover the domed ceiling, as if time has never even touched this place. And then, standing on a narrow rock ledge high up in the sky, you realize there are places not built for humans to easily find, but built to test who is truly willing to go to the very edge of faith. The next location is a small village that seems to be hanging amidst nature. Castellfollit de la Roca. Situated on a vertical basalt cliff at the confluence of two rivers, the Fluvia and the Toronel, this place possesses a beauty that is both poetic and precarious. Since medieval times, residents have used volcanic rock to build houses, creating a community clinging tightly to the cliff. At the end of the village was an ancient cemetery, closed in 1961. Prominent is the 13th century San Salvador church, destroyed during the Civil War and later restored as a cultural center. Amidst the ancient charm, the village has a modern section with a swimming pool for its more than 1,000 residents. Thanks to its unique landscape, it has become an enchanting destination, with images of the cliff and ancient rooftops famous throughout Catalonia. If most of the world looks toward the sky to find a place to live, then Kubapidi chooses to go the opposite way, burrowing deep into the earth, as if hiding from the sun itself. Located in the harsh desert of South Australia, it is famous for its precious opal mines. But more incredible is how people live, in dugouts, carved deep beneath the scorching hot soil. Above, the ground is cracked and desolate, like a forgotten planet. But below, life goes on as usual. Bedrooms, living rooms, and even churches and hotels are hidden in the earth. Here, the heat is buried, and humans find life. A quiet paradox. When nature becomes too harsh, humans do not confront it. They disappear from its sight to survive. There are places that were not built, but seem to grow out of the cliff itself. Phuktal Monastery. Perched on a cliffside in the Zanskar region, this monastery resembles a giant honeycomb clinging to the rock, looking down at the cold blue river below. There are no roads for vehicles and no easy paths. To get here, you must trek along narrow trails skirting deep abysses where every step requires absolute concentration. Built around a sacred cave where monks have meditated for centuries, Phuktal is one of the most isolated monasteries in the world. Inside, life moves slowly, praying, studying, and merging with the breath of the mountains. Here, silence is not a void, it is a very deep sound. And amidst the rock, wind, and harsh altitude, people remain, not to conquer nature, but to become a part of it. There are places located at the edge of the world, where just one more step touches the infinite ocean. Gassadalur. Located on the western tip of Vardzia Island in the Faroe Islands, this tiny village nestles between high mountains and vertical cliffs, as if sandwiched between the land and the Atlantic. Once completely isolated until a tunnel opened in 2004, Gassadalur still retains its pristine beauty: green meadows, traditional wooden houses, and only a few dozen residents living off livestock. The highlight is the Mulafossur waterfall, a stream of water falling straight from the cliff into the sea like a white thread in the sky. In summer, puffins appear, and the wind here is so strong it can become a hazard. Here, nature is breathtakingly beautiful, but powerful enough to sweep you away if you are careless. A place that is both peaceful and full of warnings. The final location on this journey does not sit on the ground, but reaches straight up into the sky, Katskhi Pillar. Located in the Merapi region, this 40-meter limestone pillar, equivalent to a 10-story building, stands tall amidst pine forests and hills, like a stone finger touching the sky. About 220 kilometers from Tbilisi, this was a place of hermitage for centuries. On top is a small church built between the 6th and 8th centuries to honor Maximus the Confessor, where monks believed that the higher they went, the closer they were to God. The last person left only in 2015. Today, Katskhi is a special pilgrimage site, a place where solitude is not for escaping the world, but for reaching closer to faith. After a journey through places that seemingly shouldn't exist, one thing gradually becomes clear. Home is not found in altitude, safety, or convenience. It lies in the way humans choose to stay. From cliffs and mountain hearts to shaking lands, all tell the same story. Limits are not there to stop us, but for humans to overcome. If this journey made you look at the world differently, stay with us and continue exploring.